consent. And that's the topic of today's lesson video from Mr. Karabi's health class. This is the consent webpage, and we're going to go and get to a more suitable size to be able to include it on this lesson video. But I like to point out a couple things first. If you're watching this, you likely already saw the video concerning the age of consent when we were talking about laws having to do with teen sexual health in the state of Pennsylvania. And I'd like to reiterate that the age of consent is technically 16 in the state of Pennsylvania, but there is a close in age exception. Uh, you cannot, under any circumstances, agree to be sexually active prior to age 13 from a legal standpoint, and you should not agree to be sexually active until the age of 16. But in the event that a 13, 14, or 15-year-old does choose to be sexually active, as long as their partner is no more than 3 years older than them in the state of Pennsylvania, it is permissible. I won't use the word legal, but it is permissible. So with that said, if you're going to be sexually active, regardless of how old you are, assuming that you're following the law and you're giving or receiving consent, what does consent mean? All right, well, to be simple, consent is clear, voluntary, and intentional words or actions that give permission. Most often it will be verbal. Some experts above my pay grade that teach me what to do will say that it's always verbal. Other experts will say that the key passage is that it must be clear. No mistake about it. No vague signals, no mixed messages. As I scroll down this page, there's a bunch of resources. We're going to highlight some of them, but I'd also like to highlight these both student created and professionally created pieces of work. This photo story was created by members of the class of 2024 at the Arts Academy of Benjamin Rush. And it teaches about consent and boundaries, and then goes and does a photo shoot on the rules and what they are. Fabulous thing, and you can look at it more slowly. These are two children's books created about consent by students in the classes of 2021 and 22. They may have borrowed some characters, but they're not for making money. They're just to teach young people about consent. I think this is completely hand drawn. I'm not positive. And there's also some videos, both professional and student created. Uh, the student created ones are an animated whiteboard video called Consent by members of the class of 2023. A clown consent video that's sort of modeled after the T consent, but about clowns, also drawn. A fabulous whiteboard animation by a student named Elaine Zhu from the class of 2024. Then there's some professional clips and videos. This is a campus made one a bunch of years ago that's part of the approved videos for the 3Rs class. 2 minutes will change the way you view consent using a cell phone. This is the world famous Consent It's as Simple as T video, the clean version. There's also a video next to that created by college students in Staffordshire University saying it's not as simple as T. Another one, Consent Using a Sandwich as an Illustrator. A clip from Pitch Perfect 2 about mixed messages being sent. And as you go on, there's some other additional videos. Consent Matters, the basics of consent. A TED Ed about what young men need to think about consent. And a little news article video about the Little Mermaid movie. Lyrics changed in the new Little Mermaid movie to talk about consent. There's some memes on the bottom talking about consent. And of course, articles and resources for everybody's pleasure. And I don't mean that in any inappropriate way. Learning, I guess, is the better word. So some very interesting professional articles and whatnot, and handouts This personal boundaries worksheet is part of the 3Rs curriculum. But in any case, going back forward, the text at the top of the page, you can go and read it yourself, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to sum it up that we know that consent, the key word about consent is that you have to be at the right age to be able to give consent, and you have to be of a legal position to receive consent, because you remember from the law, you cannot give consent if there's an imbalance of power. I'm sorry, you cannot receive consent if there's an imbalance of power, and you cannot accept consent. I guess that's a better word than receive. Accept consent if there is an institutional area of supervision. So, like, if you're a boss and the person is an underling, that's a imbalance of power. If you are I don't know, a graduate assistant teacher in college and your student might only be a year or two younger than you, but you can't accept consent from that person. So the rules, again, the main rules are: it must be clear, it must be voluntary, it must be intentional words or actions that give permission for something to happen. Um, it's not usually just a simple yes or no. It must be okay. It must be clear as to what is okay and what is not okay. AKA, what are your boundaries with intimacy? What are you allowed to have happen? What do you allow not to have happen? It is absolutely okay to change your mind on what your boundaries are. And here's here's a simple example. Making this video, I'm a male, I'm a cisgender heterosexual male. I am currently married to a cisgender heterosexual female. Hypothetically speaking, uh, we are together, we're being intimate, and I attempt to touch her breast, and she moves my hand. That is a clear sign that she does not want me touching her on her breast at that moment. If she takes my hand and places it on her breast, then that is a clear sign that she wants me to place it on her breast without using words. This is why I said it's not always verbal, better to be verbal. And let's say for some reason I wasn't comfortable doing that and I pulled my hand away, then that is a clear nonverbal no, I don't want to do that at that moment. It is better to use words, but the key is that it must be clear and it must be voluntary. Now, some people say, well, she placed your hand there. Is that voluntary? Well, if I let her move my hand, then she voluntarily gave me permission for that to happen, and I voluntarily left it there. It's much better to have communication open, to give and receive information, to be able to explain what it is, but anything less than yes is a no. You sometimes hear the word enthusiastic yes. Enthusiastic does not mean that you're jumping up and down for joy and saying, "Oh, great, this is fantastic! I can't wait to have this happen. I'm so excited." I mean, it can be, but that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for, like, yes, not a maybe, not a I'm not sure, not a we'll see what happens. It's a yes. So anything less than a yes is a no. I'd also like to point out college. Actually, I don't think I have it on here anymore. There's a college article somewhere. Maybe it's no, here it is. It's just not pictured for some reason. It used to be a picture. 2016 Campus Reform magazine was talking about an effort for informed consent. Some colleges were requiring sexual history, and there is a real push that year. Oh, no, never mind. It's right here. More college campuses swap no means no for yes means yes. So anyway, a lot of colleges are requiring you to fill out a survey about your sexual history so that they can have informed practices and limit the amount of sexual assault on their campuses. But in any case, colleges across the country adopting affirmative consent, con, consent sexual assault policies. And this article, more couches swap no means no for yes means yes, making it an affirmative. So I just reiterate to you that anything less than a yes is a no. This website, what consent does and doesn't look like, it's from loveisrespect.org. It's a safe and inclusive space for young people with questions about their romantic relationships. Loveisrespect.org is an approved site under the 3 R's curriculum. Anyway, going back up, this drop-down menu goes and talks about consent is not ever able to be given under the following circumstances. It can never be given under any sort of incapacitation. That includes alcohol, drugs, while sleeping. Other examples where if you have a concussion, if you're ill, if there's any sort of issue like that. It can never be given if one partner is not of legal age and you are not within the close-in age exception of Pennsylvania. It can never be given under any sort of coercion or manipulation is involved or a major imbalance of power. And the sexual act must not be illegal. There is a Keys to Success handout that we'll share with you in a moment. But here are some graphics I took offline. This one is from Harvey Mudd College, the Office of Title IX. Consent is always active. It's unmistakable via words or actions, and it's ongoing. It's not just a passive thing. No means you know, only yes means yes. It must be clear. I said ongoing already when I said active, confirmed at each level of sexual activity. It is required and never inferred. It is voluntary. It is knowing, fully conscious, not impaired at all. And they must all occur between consenting adults who are in Pennsylvania at least at 16 years old, technically speaking. This below graphic was created by a student in the class of 2023 saying that consent is not, what consent is not and what it is. And you're always allowed to change your mind. This graphic, Fry's, is from Planned Parenthood. It sums up consent as freely given, reversible, so you can change your mind, informed, you understand what the rules of consent are. You understand your person's relationship status, their age, and their STD status, and any other information you need to know. It's enthusiastic and it's specific. This is another student piece of artwork. She's broken because she believed he's okay because he lied. Talks about sexual abuse. And love has boundaries. So that's basically the keys to what consent is. And going on, the keys to consent, aka permission. Yes means yes, no means no. No does not mean maybe or keep trying. Must be clear, voluntary, intentional, verbal, or purposeful action. Must be legal, aids of consent rules or local laws. Must be active and ongoing. You have a right to change your mind during and after, and each new step must be clear. Boundaries discussed, is this okay? Must be voluntary by both or all participants, never under any sorts of coercion, manipulation, blackmail, or guilt. It is required and cannot be assumed. And additional factors include trust, respect for each other, is in an ongoing relationship without change. Consent can never be given under any sort of mental incapacitation when there's an imbalance of power. Sorry. And other things to consider: consent versus informed consent, safe words or terms. If you have any questions about consent, you should look it up on our website and also refer to local laws. See you in class.